So if you object to being recorded, please leave. Brendan, if you wouldn't mind, please, or Graham, as folks are hopping in, if you'll just make sure they're muted. Again, we're going to be muting folks as they're joining. We do have open lines, so if you need to come off mute, certainly you're welcome to. We're anticipating about 25 or 30 folks this morning, so good turnout. And this is really meant to be 100% just a conversation is really what we're shooting for. Is sharing of information. We're going to share a ton of assets with you guys, hopefully that you can use with your teams. Looking forward to getting started here. I'm showing 10:02, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just want to make sure from the PTG team that somebody on the PTG team has actually started recording. Brendan, Graham, can you confirm, please?
Yes, this is Graham. I'm recording now.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, let's get started. So good morning, everybody. We've got a whole bunch of different folks from a whole bunch of different industries joining us this morning. Excited to see the numbers grow. My name is Reed Wilson. I'm the CEO of PTG. On the call, we have Brendan Blowers. Brendan, you want to take just a second and introduce yourself?
Hey, everyone. I'm the marketing director for PTG.
And then we've got Graham Cobb on the call.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Graham runs our customer experience team, and Chris Van Zant should be on the call.
Yeah, I'm here, Chris Van Zant, technical account manager at PTG.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. So the intent here is really not to be like a traditional webinar. We really wanted to set this up more as a town hall. We're kind of in our third week now of at least PTG is of working from home. And so we've got a bunch of data points here. We're going to share some stuff that we've learned. We're now again on our third week of having a purely remote workforce. And then obviously if you have comments, feedback, questions, I'd encourage you first to put it in the chat window in Teams. Our team is going to be taking a look at that and trying to field those questions. And then certainly if you want to come off mute, you're more than welcome to ask a question. We just ask again that you just be cognizant of that mute button and mute yourself after your question. So the real question is, why are we here? And I pulled these three stats. It's funny, pre-coronavirus or pre-COVID-19, only 3.2% of the workforce was a 100% normal, like all remote workforce, which is staggering when you consider that I wasn't able to find a stat now that shows the percentage of folks that are actually working from home. And it seems like multiple states are going multiple directions as it relates to shelter in place. But we know just based on feedback we've received that just Microsoft Teams usage by itself has grown by 12 million daily active users since March 11th. And that doesn't include other platforms like Slack, Zoom, GoToMeeting, and other remote collaboration platforms. So clearly huge growth just in the last couple of weeks as it relates to remote workforce. So we polled all of our customers and said, hey, based on your feedback, what are the things that you feel like you need help with or that you'd like for us to cover from a best practices perspective? And we got three kind of top answers. So these are the three we're going to focus on. We may do a town hall later that covers others, but we're going to focus right now on work from home strategies. Remote security came in second, which is kind of an interesting topic. And then teams tips and tricks. I know most of our customers are heavy Microsoft shops. We do have some organizations that are using both Teams and Cisco WebEx, or Teams and Zoom, or Teams and GoToMeeting. So we're really going to focus right now on the Teams platform. We do have an asset available to you that is going to be really more generic as well. So excited once we get to that. Again, for those of you who came in a little bit late, we're going to make the slides available to you after the presentation. Feel free to use these internally, and then all of the links that you'll see for assets will also be compiled in an email that Brendan will get out to you. So if you can't write them down as we're working your way through this, then certainly don't sweat it. All right, so let's get started with work from home strategies. I don't know how many folks can identify with this guy. I know I can. I saw somebody posted a message on LinkedIn the other day that was a great dichotomy of kind of being, if you have kids at home right now, of being a working parent and a teacher all at the same time, and kind of what your day looks like as you're toggling between, coaching employees, working with customers, and also, trying to teach math. I came down the steps 3 or 4 days ago, and Bennett, who's my 7-year-old, was telling my wife that she was the best teacher ever. And then like 2 days later, I came down the steps and I overheard him say, "You're the worst teacher ever." So definitely, I think a challenge that we're facing right now is how do we get this work from home strategy stuff down? So if you want to take this URL down, we've got a download available to you that walks through essentially in more depth the content that we're going to cover here. We think there's really 5 key areas as it relates to how to successfully work from home. Again, we're going to cover those as we go through here, but if you want to write that down, it's just ptg.tips/WFH for work from home download. So if you want to go grab that. And then this is another great one that's available to you for those of you who might be SharePoint users. There is a free asset called the Microsoft 365 Learning Path. We can deploy that into your SharePoint environment. And it is basically online training for Office, Teams, Outlook, OneDrive, Planner, Sway, anything that's in your Office 365 suite. You can deploy that learning path out into your SharePoint environment and then assign classes out to your team. So we've been using it at PTG for probably 6 to 9 months. Use it very heavily for new hires. Again, if you're interested in that, you can just Google 365 Learning Paths, or if you'd like for us to deploy that into your 365 tenant, just reach out to Graham's team and they can help get that going for you. So 2 assets just to make available to you. Again, that first one is the work from home download, and then the second one is the Teams Learning Path. So let's talk about the 5 strategies for working from home. These are the ones that we've uncovered. If anybody has any others, feel free to pop those in the chat. But we think there's 5 things you want to focus on, both as an employee as well as if you're a manager for working from home. And those 5 things are routine, workspace, breaks, communication, and productivity. And in that download that you have access to, we go into depth as to what each one of these look like. But we've also covered off both an employee kind of mindset and a manager kind of mindset. So if you're an employee, you might have one set of kind of rules for working from home, and if you're a manager, obviously you're leading people, so that looks a little bit different. So routine. To me, this is the most important one. If you've never worked from home, is setting that daily routine. For me personally, I have to get up every single morning. I got to take a shower. I got to put on work clothes. I got to drink a cup of coffee. I got to read, and then I got to get into my daily routine of work, and that switches my brain on that says, "Hey, it's time to work." Brendan, Graham, either one of you want to share what your routine is daily working from home? Brendan?
Yeah, sure. So I use Microsoft Tasks. So every morning when I'm drinking my coffee, I go over the tasks that I had put in the night before. So the last thing I do before I leave my workstation at night is I put in my tasks for the day tomorrow. And the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is get my coffee and look at those tasks just to make sure that nothing gets missed.
Are you a get up and shower to get your day started kind of guy, or can you just roll out of bed in your PJs and get straight to work?
We're getting a little personal here. No, I shower at night a lot of times, but if I do need to shower or do a little exercise, I'll just set the alarm an hour earlier.
Got it. What about boundaries with family members? Brendan, have you found that to be a struggle at all in kind of the day-to-day routine? I know you have 2 young kids at home.
Yeah, so my wife is also working from home right now. So we both set up different workstations at different parts of the house. And my daughter is also doing online schooling right now. Good thing is she's actually a pretty good self-starter, so she just needs minimum guidance by us for that. But we also have my mother-in-law who has been kind enough to be watching my little son while we're working during the day. So we've got it kind of worked out, but there are a lot of people here.
Yeah, it's been funny. I think my wife overheard me on a conference call, and she said that there's a business read and a home read. And I saw something on LinkedIn, or maybe it was Twitter, that said, "Who knew I married a let's circle up on that later guy?" That the wife had heard the husband on a conference call. I thought that was pretty important or pretty cool. So again, I think setting that daily routine, folks, and modeling that for your team is really important. One thing that we've noticed is that meetings can get a little hairy. So we have an established rhythm at PTG where every Monday we have a certain set of meetings, every Tuesday we have a certain set of meetings, and then departments have meetings perhaps throughout the week. Making sure that if you're managing people, you are setting the right expectation, showing up on time, starting that meeting on time, and being really focused in. You know, setting, I think, the right expectation as well. If you're leading a team and you're on a meeting, maybe you're not leading the meeting, but you're on the meeting, and it's very clear to your team that you're texting or typing in the middle of the meeting. I think just being aware of how that can be received by your team members is an important thing to think about from a routine perspective. From a workspace perspective, this one is again true both for employees and management. For me, I have to have a clear space for my workspace. Ideally, for me personally, it's in a section of the house that's not connected to anything else. That's not like also another room. We've turned a little area above our garage into really my home office. If you have a spare bedroom that you can turn into your office, I actually spoke with a customer yesterday who said she was working in her walk-in closet. Which, hey, if that's what works, I think setting those boundaries is really important. I also think having a clear workspace. If you go back to the slide that had the picture of the guy that had, for some reason, he had a whole bunch of clutter on his desktop, trying to clear that off and make your space as ready for work as possible is really important. Dual monitors. I know a couple people on the call actually let some employees take some of their monitors home. I think that's a great idea. But you can also get creative with your setup. Again, the same customer I spoke to yesterday that was using a walk-in closet, one of their teammates was using their 70-inch television as their secondary screen. So if you get used to a certain rhythm at work as it relates to multiple screens, I think trying to replicate your workspace at home as much as possible is really important. At PTG, we even let everybody take like their desk chairs home, because a lot of folks don't have really comfortable desk chairs. And so we set up a way for them to let us know, hey, we're taking this asset home, because we want them to be able to be as productive as possible at home. So I'd encourage you to maybe think about that as well. Headsets, cameras are really hard to come by now. But if you can set your team up, I think with good quality headsets, we all use Jabra noise canceling headphones. Those are really nice. Or I mean, heck, even just your little AirPods or earpods, you can plug those in directly into the headphone jack inside your PC and have a much better experience than just try and use your PC and your mic on your device. Graham, you got any tips on workspace at home?
I would say don't be afraid to try something new. I think I've moved mine around probably 5 or 6 times, just trying to figure out where I'm most comfortable at. I think I've landed in the foyer, which is going to be good for a while, but I would just say get creative of what makes you comfortable. Yeah.
So what Graham's not telling you, this is actually mentioned in a later slide, is I think he's worked in just about every room in his house. One of the first calls we did, video calls we did, he was in his garage, which I guess works in the springtime, but wouldn't be so good in the summertime. How about you, Chris Van Zant? Anything you're finding that's working really well on you working from home from a workspace perspective?
For me, it was finally getting my monitor set up to closely mirror what I have at work. So that was the big key for me.
Cool. Good. All right. How about breaks? So this one I think is really important as well. Just naturally, I think when we are At work, we interact with one another a little bit more. You're going to get up a little bit more. You're going to walk to get coffee. You're going to go use a restroom, maybe get a snack. So for me, I've set a timer. I work for 45 and I take a 15-minute just break. I might walk down the driveway, go downstairs and see what my family's doing. I've really enjoyed actually taking conference calls that didn't require me to have a video component out in my driveway, so I could walk just a little bit. My driveway is got a little bit of a steep to it, so sometimes I'll end up huffing and puffing. But that's been a great strategy for me. Under the management side, that second bullet I think has been really important for us. I think work from home makes managing to the numbers easier. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but we have dashboards set up at PTG. We've always had dashboards set up, but it's funny when you can't actually see people and have those visual cues of the person, actually being able to look at the data points makes management and leadership, I think, a little bit easier. So holding team members accountable to those key performance indicators, knowing what they are, has worked exceptionally well for us. For our sales team, I know we're tracking very closely number of calls per day. We're trying to watch pipeline growth very carefully. Chris, on the services side of the business, any KPIs that jump out to you that have made kind of the management of remote services people a little bit more transparent?
Yeah, the ones we're looking at are ticket age, which is how long a ticket basically has been open with us. That's a key metric we're looking at. Another one is stale tickets, and that's if we have a ticket open on the board, but if an engineer hasn't put any time in it for 2, 3, 4 hours or even a day, looking at those two metrics to kind of make sure we're looking at the tickets as they come in and we're working them under the SLA agreement that we need to. And then the last one is always the customer satisfaction, which is the customer feedback with the smiley face or frowny face. Those are really the three key ones we're monitoring at this time.
Cool. Thanks for that. So any of you that are current PTG customers, I think everybody on the call is, but please give us that feedback. Yep, Brendan, you gonna say something?
We got a question from John Phillips. He says, are you seeing that people are more or less productive? We're finding in certain areas that they're more productive.
It's funny that you mentioned that, John. Two of our key metrics for us are tickets over 10 days old and tickets over 2 hours old. And those are always like real tough issues to solve. And we've seen those numbers almost get cut in half in the past 3 weeks. And I think that the reason that is because people are able to focus and kind of really work their way through the those tougher issues. So we are seeing, I think, from a services perspective, we're seeing an increase in productivity. I think some of that's related to focus. Perhaps some of that could be it's just easier to reach people that we're trying to work on those issues now because they're at home. They can't be anywhere else, right? So we can track them down a little bit easier. So great question. We've seen, I think, largely an uptick in productivity. It'll be interesting, John, to see how that changes now that South Carolina's in the shelter in place through the end of April. Does that start to nosedive? Great question. All right, let's hop over to communication. So setting up that, we've got one slide here for employees and one slide for managers. If you can use video, I know video sometimes is a bit awkward, but if you can use video, we find that to be much more engaging. You can read people's body language, you can read their faces. We know that there's a limit right now with Microsoft Teams of only 4 active participants. That is going to change by the end of April. Microsoft's been working on that, but this work from home situation has caused their development team to work faster. It wasn't actually supposed to come out until the end of Q2, but we're anticipating more active video available in Teams by the end of April. I know Zoom and GoToMeeting, I think, already support that. So I would encourage you to encourage your staff. This was a message that came from me to my leadership team that said, hey, when we're talking to staff, let's try to use video every single time so that we can keep that face-to-face connection. What's been interesting has been how that has changed over the past 3 weeks. Becky Azevedo, who runs our NOC, most of you know her. God bless her. Becky's a phenomenal person and a lot of fun if you know her personality. I think today, and maybe even last week as well, she showed up with her hair in a towel, which was totally fine, right? So having that kind of engagement and being open with your team about, hey, we're all working from home, and looking perfect or being in a suit and tie is not necessarily required, I think is really important. I also would,
Hey, Reed, real
yeah,
quick.
shoot, yeah.
Brandon Herring has a question. Can you tell us a little more about the 4 active user limit? Is it just those that show on the screen, or will other users experience issues?
Yeah, so right now in Teams, when you're sharing video, it only shows 4 active video folks that have video, and it only shows folks who are talking. So if Chris and Graham had video on, their video would show across the bottom when you're sharing a screen. If you're not sharing a screen, and you're only doing a video chat, Brandon, you'll only see those the last 4 folks that have spoken, is how that currently works. The plan is, as I've been told, is by the end of April, you should see, we haven't been given a number. I know Zoom supports 29, I think, active users or active videos. The plan is to expand that past 4. Hope I answered your question. Also thinking about video, is think about, if you're going to be in a public place in your house, think about what's behind you. I know Teams and Zoom both have the ability to change the background. Well, Teams doesn't have the ability to change the background yet. Zoom does. And then I tell my family over breakfast every morning, like, hey, here's the calls that I've got where I know I'm going to be blocked off, and just set that expectation up front. From a management perspective, I think just keeping your team members engaged. We did a virtual happy hour. Brendan, if you want to talk just a second about that, I've seen a couple folks do that.
Yeah, so we also have a blog post on our blog section that's kind of the social side of working from home, and I reached out to some other people in the community to get their best ideas, and we put that in the blog. And one of the ideas that people are starting to do are these virtual happy hours. So the basic idea is you send out an invitation on Teams, and you let everyone know, hey, at 5 o'clock today, we're all going to hop on, get your favorite beverage, doesn't have to be alcoholic, whatever you want, and you can go outside, you can be anywhere, and we're just going to hang out together, virtually, and have some laughs. And so we've done it once as a PTG team. We're already actively scheduling the next one, because it's just kind of a way for people to blow off steam and retain that connection.
Yeah. Yeah, so spoke with a customer yesterday, who they've done that a couple times, and they might have some more introverted folks on their team. So prior to the virtual happy hour, they listed out 5 questions, and you had to come prepared to answer 3 of the 5, just to kind of drive some engagement, which I thought was cool. Like, what was your favorite childhood joy, dream vacation, 2 truths and a lie, I think is always a fun one. So think about, ways you can engage your team there. And then we're seeing a ton of chat internally, to drive engagement. One of the most active posts recently was, your quarantine name is the last food you ate and your high school mascot. I think, Brendan, you posted that one, and we almost had 100% participation over the course of 2 days of folks chiming in with their quarantine name, which was kind of fun.
Real quick, Reed, I want to address something. Noel just posted something, and he was saying, there's been a lot in the news about security issues with Zoom. And I know we posted an Instagram yesterday. I just kind of collected all the recent news items about Zoom security. That's one of the reasons that we use Teams. And I don't know if Chris, you want to weigh in on this as well, but I guess the main issue with Zoom is that it doesn't really offer that end-to-end encryption, and that there's been some hackers that have been able to get into people's tenants through that.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the truth about Zoom. It's a phenomenal product. I mean, if you've used it, it works extremely well. It is lightweight. It works exceptionally well on mobile. So I don't knock the product at all. I think there are maybe some security things. I think Zoom is going to respond to those very quickly. The Facebook thing they've already fixed. I think they'll probably fix the end-to-end encryption. Brendan, personally, and Chris, you feel free to chime in here. I don't think we've got a dog in that fight as it relates to Zoom versus Teams. The way I describe it is a machete versus a Swiss Army knife. A machete is great for one thing, chopping down really big stuff, and I think Zoom is a phenomenal remote meeting platform. So if you're doing large scale meetings, there's a lot of reasons why you might want to use Zoom. Teams is really more of that Swiss Army knife. So it's, great collaboration platform, great way to keep your teams in sync. Also happens to do meetings as well. So it's got that, that saw blade, the toothpick, and the tweezers, whereas Zoom is really more of that machete. Chris, you got any thoughts on that, or any feedback, or anybody else on the call if you want to pop something in the chat window?
No, I agree with everything you just said. I mean, I think Zoom's a good product. It's great, and they're going to spend the next time addressing some of those vulnerabilities. I know the Facebook one was the big one you mentioned. So
yeah.
And John Phillips actually had a really good point. He says, the configurations for Zoom are there. You just have to go in and enable them. And a lot of people are just adding these virtual chat platforms, saying yes to everything and not realizing that you need to actually pay attention to what the privacy is.
100%. That's why, I know we posted that message out there about Zooms versus Teams, but I mean, I think it's a good product. I think if you're using it, I wouldn't necessarily stop using it. I think there's a good use case for it. Just know what your limits are. Know what your regulatory compliance needs are. Okay, so let's keep going. That was the biggest section. So hang in here with us, and we'll get through the rest of these slides pretty quickly. Sorry, I've got to hit productivity really quickly. Sorry about that. We've already talked about most of this already. I would encourage you to leverage your cloud technology. If you're an Office 365 subscriber, this deck that we worked on here, we had 5 people working on it all at the same time. Some of them were actually remote, not even PTG employees who were sharing feedback. And we didn't once email this document back and forth. We didn't once have to, consolidate changes. It all lived in the cloud and worked really well. So great opportunity to drive engagement with your team and make them aware of the technology that you have. And that Office 365 learning path that I mentioned earlier as an asset is a great way to get folks to actually comfortable with using the tools. Okay. All right, let's hop into remote security. We got an asset here available for you. I'm going to pull this up really quickly. Brendan, tell me when this comes through. You see that?
Yep, there you go.
So this asset's available to you. It's 18 things to make your remote work secure, convenient, and stress-free, and it is 100% yours to use and share. And everything has a checkbox next to it. So you could literally give this to your staff and say, hey, these are the things that are important to us. Feel free to make changes to that or X items out that maybe don't apply in your world. Let me hop back to the PowerPoint now. It's loading up. And Brendan, what is that? What is that? I won't do that again. I apologize. It's making me start over. What is that URL while I'm getting back to it here? If you want to download the remote security guide.
Looks like we lost Brendan. He posted it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. So my screen should be coming back through, Graham. Can you see the asset 18 tips for remote security now?
Correct. We're good to go.
Okay, perfect. So if you would like that asset, just go out there, ptg.tips, whack 18 things, download. And I won't share that again. I apologize for that. And then this is from a remote security perspective, a great asset I would encourage you to go use and share with your team. It's about a 4.5-minute video of how a phishing attack works. And it's really kind of like a short TV clip, not boring, not overly techy. And one of the things I love about this video is it actually looks at it from the hacker's perspective, the bad guy's perspective. And the last thing that the guy says, or actually it's a female hacker, that she says at the end of the interview is, hey, it's kind of a faceless crime, right? There's basically insurance for this kind of thing. And I have a peer who works with this kind of technology, actually negotiating ransomware stuff, and that he has shared that with me. He has said specifically that the hackers view this as a faceless crime. So share that. I would encourage you to share that YouTube video with your team. So I'm going to motor through these 10 items here fairly quickly from a remote security perspective. But if you are not using multi-factor authentication, please figure out what you need to do to get that set up. 99% of all account takeover attacks can be blocked with multi-factor authentication. Drive VPN usage as best you can, and don't forget to VPN your, don't forget to MFA your VPN. We're seeing an uptick of folks trying to break into folks' VPNs, and almost every modern VPN technology today would support MFA. Massive increase of phishing, so driving that awareness with your team. Spear phishing, spoofing. We're seeing a ton of spoofing attacks happen where they impersonate the CEO or the CFO and say, "Hey, I need you to do this thing, whatever it might be. Transfer this money, go buy gift cards, send gift cards to these people." We're seeing that increase exponentially in this work from home model. So please inform your teams and make sure they are aware. Limit home PC use as much as possible. We cannot control, obviously, what folks are doing at home, and we certainly can't control the endpoint. So, if you have to have somebody use their home PC, I would encourage you to reach out to Graham's team to figure out how can we limit those downloads as much as possible. And I've got access to a handful of SentinelOne free licenses. So if you have folks that are using home PCs, if you're interested in trying to secure those with SentinelOne, which is the next gen endpoint protection that we use on your PTG managed PCs, let me know. That's going to be first come, first serve on those. If employees are working at home, make sure to check their antivirus, specifically if they're using that home PC. Thinking through file shares and file servers. Great time to remind folks that you have access to OneDrive, you have access to SharePoint if you're an Office 365 user, and so this is a good time. I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon as it relates to how long we're going to be working remotely. So good opportunity to rethink file shares and file servers. Encourage sharing via the cloud as much as possible. Discourage USB drives; they're unencrypted, and email. Encourage self-service password reset. That's a feature in Office 365 that can keep your users from getting locked out if they forget their password. Set policy around vendor payments, specifically around wires and financial transactions. We're seeing that on the uptick, specifically around phishing. And then I think just having the security conversation frequently. We have an all hands every Friday, and I don't think there's a Friday that goes by that we don't bring that up in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Chris, you got anything you'd add on the remote security side?
No, I think the main one is just like Reed said, and I would just say if you are connected with the VPN, you really only need to stay connected to the VPN while you're using the resources that require it. Once you're done, disconnect your machine, so that way you don't leave it connected and have maybe a child or something come up and start, doing something on your machine and do something. It kind of leads to malware getting installed and then going in that way. So that'd be the only thing I would add.
Can you tell us more about kind of what you mean there, Chris, please? For those who might not be as tech.
So if you're connected with your VPN and let's say your child comes in and downloads malware, it can actually get on your machine. And then since it has that tunnel connection open, it can go over that connection to corporate resources and then infect stuff that way. So that's just one reason we do kind of recommend that once you're done with the VPN, disconnect, and then, you can go on, back to just your normal work after that.
Perfect.
Reed, we've got a lot of activity in the chat around this. Brandon said Microsoft has named locations for conditional access that works well with third-party VPN. Does anybody want to chime in on that? It helps make sure people are using a secure connection instead of an open wireless.
Yeah, that's what's conditional access, for those of you who may not know, basically says, do I meet certain conditions? And if I don't meet those conditions, block the access. Now, depending upon your licensing that you might have, you may or may not have access to that tool. We are big fans of conditional access at PTG. I know some of you on the call use it as well. So for example, you might have a conditional access policy that says, hey, if I'm logging in from an infrequent location, then block the access or proof up through a multi-factor authentication prompt. The one Brandon specifically mentioned, Brandon Herring and Armon Analytics is mentioning is, hey, I'm only going to allow access from these named locations. So if you're not connecting to our stuff from one of these locations, then I'm going to block access, which is a great tool if you have access to it. It would be available in Microsoft 365 Business and higher. So if you're a Microsoft 365 Enterprise user, or Microsoft 365 Business user, or Azure AD Premium Plan 1, or I don't think it's in Plan 1, sorry, it's in Plan 2. So if you were interested in lighting those features up, you can get with Graham's team, and he can help you turn those features on or get properly licensed.
And then along those same lines, Dean said, do you ask employees about their home network? Have they changed their router, admin password? Do they require a password to get on the network? Those types of things.
We have asked folks to, especially people that are in dense neighborhoods or in condos, to be aware. When you look at the 18 tips for remote security, there is one in there, Dean, that specifically mentions, make sure that you are using the correct Wi-Fi. Make sure you're using your Wi-Fi, especially if you have open Wi-Fi or a SSID broadcast where everybody can see the name of your wireless router. Being careful about allowing those things to connect automatically. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that document. I think we've done an okay job there of outlining the questions you might want to think about asking your employees. And RJ's point around huge increase in phishing attacks via fake quarantine email reports. Man, I got 3 really good ones last week. Exceptionally well crafted. 2 were quarantine emails that looked almost identical to the Microsoft one, and the third one was voicemail. Now, if you're using ATP, Advanced Threat Protection, I'm kind of a gambler. I always click on those links because I just want to see what if ATP catches it. And so far, I'm batting 100. Chris Van Zant's having a small heart attack now. But if you're using Advanced Threat Protection, it should catch the vast majority of those links. If you're not using Advanced Threat Protection, I'd encourage you again to reach out to the team and get some details on that. Okay, so let's hop into Teams tips and tricks. Just in the interest of time, we've got a download out here, ptg.tips, 8 ways download. Brendan, are those case sensitive?
The W, yeah, you do need to just capitalize the W.
Okay,
there.
Good.
Yeah.
So this is 8 things that we've listed out on that you could share with your teams that I think are really good, and they're not specific to Microsoft Teams. They're all virtual training platform or video platform specific. My favorite one in the whole list, I won't share it with you, I'd plan to, but it's messing my screen share up, is don't ask open-ended questions on a large call. And I was making that mistake left and right. So I'd encourage you to check that out. There is a Microsoft Teams Quick Start Guide, ptg.tips WAC TQS for Teams Quick Start, that you can share with your team. It's like a 3-page PDF that walks through the basics of what are teams, what are channels, how do you @mention people, things like that. So I'm gonna assume most folks on the call are pretty aware of Teams. Oh, sorry, we also have this quick start video as well, ptg.tips WAC Teams. It's about a 2-minute video, I think, on how to get started quickly with Teams. So again, we'll make all these links available to you after the presentation. And this one too, sorry, ptg.tips/etiquette. This is actually coming from Matt Wade, who is a Teams Microsoft MVP. Great digital download that walks through kind of the etiquette of how to use Teams. This is one of my pet peeves over here, where folks will think they're replying to a message and they start a new thread. Matt does an excellent job of breaking out those kinds of etiquette items in that document. So I'd encourage you to go download that. That's from AvePoint and Matt Wade. That is not a PTG asset. Okay, so I'm going to run through just a couple of quick ones. Most folks do not know that there is a full text editor available right in Teams. So if you click that little A with the pencil next to it, it will full screen your Teams message. So you can do things like add bold, change things with italics, highlight items, drop in links, encourage you to make sure your team is aware. And also, if you press enter when you are in this message, it won't post the message. So if you are typing in this screen and you press enter, it's going to automatically post the message. Whereas if you are in the full text editor, you can actually now format your message a little bit better. So I'd encourage you to make sure your team is aware of that one from a Microsoft Teams perspective. This one, if you are, so everybody that joined this via Teams, this chat is going to stay persistent, which is kind of cool, but also can be not so fun. So if 3 weeks from now somebody starts up another chat on this specific window, you're going to get notifications of that. So learning how you can mute. This is a weekly meeting that I am in, and for whatever reason, people keep posting chat in that outside of the meeting window, and so I have muted that chat because I don't want it to interrupt my workflow. So the way you do that is you just find your chat, click the little ellipse, and click unmute or mute. And then if you just want to leave the chat altogether, you can also just press that leave button. Now remember that if you do that, everybody on your team is going to know that you left, or everybody that was in that chat is going to know that you left. So, use that feature sparingly. Okay, mastering your notifications. If you go into settings in Teams, that's where your it's where the cog is in the upper right-hand corner of Teams. And click on notifications. You'll see all the ways that you can limit the amount of pop-ups. I'm the kind of guy that I don't want any pop-ups coming in on my screen. The one that I've turned off specifically is this missed activity emails. You might get a message that says your teammates are trying to reach you in Teams. I know that my teammates are trying to reach me in Teams, so I've actually turned that notification off, and I've turned off all notification sounds. So I'd encourage you to check those out. Manage priority access. If you are on Do Not Disturb, I'm getting a little advanced, so I'm assuming most of you know what Do Not Disturb is. And if you are on Do Not Disturb, your messages will not be received by your messages will not be received from those who send you messages. So you can manage priority access so that folks can break through your Do Not Disturb status. So if you have some senior leaders that you want to make sure can reach you if you're on Do Not Disturb, you're going to manage that priority access there. Two little items that I think are very valuable in a Teams message is you can copy a link to a message if you wanted to share that maybe in a one-to-one chat or with a group of people, or sharing an item out to Outlook. So if you wanted to turn a Teams message into an Outlook message, if you click that little share conversation over email, share to Outlook, it's going to pop open an Outlook window. You can type in an email address, and it's going to share that message to the folks that actually get the email. Okay. And then if you're like most of us who have been using Teams for a while, you get a ton of notifications in your feed. And if you want to go back and filter those out, I'll start over here at the beginning. I'm just in my activity up here in the upper left-hand corner of Teams. You can filter what's coming through on your feed just by clicking that little filter button. When you do, you get all of these options. So you can see your unread items, your at mentions. At mentions mean you have an action that needs to be taken. Replies to your messages. And so I've just filtered here all of my at mentions, and now you can see all of my at mentions in my filter screen there. So those are a couple of, I think we're gonna do a more basic Teams session in the next couple of weeks that really walks through the basics, kind of Teams 101. Once we get that scheduled and firmed up, we'll be glad to send that out if you're interested in attending. That is the last slide that I had. We got about 15 minutes left before the top of the hour. So I want to open up the floor for questions if somebody wants to come off mute, if somebody wants to share off maybe a best practice that they've learned. Brendan's just asked a question here. Is there any type of sessions you'd like for us to try to cover in the next little bit? So if anybody wants to share any feedback or questions, we're going to open the floor up. Here I am asking an open-ended question, but wanted to offer that up. Okay, Brendan, you got anything you want to add?
No, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. This was a new format for us, but we wanted to be able to get as many of you information as we could, and so we're just always available with information. And if you guys like this format and you want to see us do more of this, let us know, and we'd be happy to set up some future sessions.
Chris Van Zant, anything?
Yep, I don't have anything. If anybody has any questions, let us know.
How about you, Graham?
Just wishing everybody a wonderful upcoming weekend. Enjoy this beautiful weather we have.
Okay, great. Well, again, we're going to get the slides out to everybody. If you missed any of the items, certainly let us know. We'll be glad to. You can email Brendan or Graham, or certainly me, and we'll be glad to go deeper on any of these items with you. We really hope this has been valuable for you. Appreciate everybody joining in. Thanks for your feedback, those who offered it, and I hope your businesses stay safe and your team stays safe as well. Thanks much.